I guess I just got to go to the source. Luckily, it worked out. I ended up getting to work with like each of the bands that I found that place because of, which is pretty cool.
Wow. And so I guess looking back on that time, like those 2 years in England, like what would you say is like, I don't know, the biggest lesson that you took from that whole experience? Was it just the perseverance and the persistence, or was there like an audio lesson that you carry with you today?
Bit of both. Definitely keeping things simple and organized was big. I ended up doing a lot of mix prep for him at the beginning. So the organization thing was very, very drilled into me. And again, like now I do a lot of remote stuff, and I have been since I've had the baby. I haven't been doing so much in-person stuff for the last few weeks. So I'm doing a ton of...
congrats on the air for
Thank you.
becoming a dad. Welcome to the dad club.
Oh, yeah. A lot of like string arrangement sessions where I have like 80, 90 tracks of strings and then a bunch of synths, and just, making sure everything is super organized and labeled, and, I know how people want their stuff to look like. That was huge. I remember one of the first things I asked. So when I got there, I sort of just sat in a corner quietly for months, as you do. When it was appropriate, I'd ask a question like, what'd you do with that compressor? Why this mic? But I remember when I finally got talking with John a bit more, I was asking about the tones on like the Architects album, or this Your Demise thing, or You Me at 6. He's like, every guitar sound I've ever done, he's like, either it's my Marshall head or something that they bring in, but always through my Marshall slanted 1960 A cab with a single 57. I'm like, yeah, but this sound too? He's like, the same thing. Every single guitar sound. I was like, oh, you really don't have to overthink this. Because I like coming from audio school, I don't know if you did anything similar, but we'd always, have fun and experiment with like 8 mics on a cab, like behind the cab in the back of the room. He's like, no, just one.
Yeah, never. I didn't go to audio school. I'm self-taught.
Nice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I keep it even stupider. I just plug in and use amp simulation. So
I am now. Yeah.
Yeah, you are now. Yeah, I'm a bass player, so I never like had to buy a guitar amp for any reason. So
right.
When I started recording, I was just like, I guess I'm going to use these, and then they've gotten better over the years, and like now they have the neural DSP stuff is insane. And
I've got the Quad Cortex beside me, and this thing is crazy.
Awesome. Yeah, listen, like, you could do so much now. It's like it's a different world, right?
So simple. But yeah, that.
Yeah.
And one of my teachers had said it before as well, but again, being in England, it very much reassured it. But like, nobody's ever been fired for bad audio. Just be a good person. Be somebody that people want to hang out with in a small room for 12 plus hours a day.
Yeah, being a good hang is the key, right?
Absolutely.
That's everything. I believe it was Andrew Sheps that said on Working Class Audio, the number one rule of being an audio engineer is don't be a dick.
Absolutely.
Everything else is gravy. If you're a good person, if you're a good hang, like absolutely.
That's it.
That's why people will hire you time and time again.
You got to make people comfortable.
Amazing.
That's it.
Yeah, totally. Hey everyone, you may have heard me mention before that I recently started a Discord server for the podcast. If you want to join the conversation over there, you can find a link in the show notes or on the homepage of this podcast at secretsonics.co. In the coming days, I'm going to be sharing a sample pack there with some of my own personal samples that I use all the time in my productions. This pack will only ever be shared on the Secret Sonics Discord server, so I hope to see you there soon. All right, back to the episode. So tell me a bit about, I guess, your return back to Canada. I know you play in the band Silverstein. How did that happen? And then maybe like transitioning into like production full time.
Yeah. So after being in the UK for the couple of years, I came back for a couple of reasons, but the visa was coming up. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, just graduated university. We've been together for a long time, by the way. So yeah, she was graduating university here in Toronto. My grandpa wasn't doing too good at the time. So it just like kind of made sense to come home. Came back, tried to start doing production sort of freelance by myself. And of course it's slow going. Like I'm again new to the country, so trying to build it up a little bit. I ended up interning at another studio for only a couple weeks. There was a big studio in Toronto. I got called up to come have an interview and, potentially start there. And it all seemed good. at the end of the interview, he's like, we'll start you off as an intern again just to make sure everybody kind of like vibes and everything is good. I'll preface this with before, like as soon as I graduated audio school, I got a call to work at, or sort of be a runner at another big studio just on the east side of Toronto. And it was all fine. I was there for about a week and a half, but it was like 8 a.m. starts, and we'd finish around midnight. And it was a 2-hour drive for me. So it was a lot. It was fun. I learned a lot. But they asked me to stay on at the end of that session. And I said, no, I'm trying to save up to go to England. If I were to take this job, I'd have to move out to like Scarborough area, which would mean I'd be spending money in rent and not saving to do this thing. So similar idea. I started at this other studio and it was right back to being an intern, you know, like the scrubbing toilets thing. You know, if a client comes in, you hide in the back. Never heard from. I ended up having to weed the rooftop garden one day, which didn't really enjoy. And I know how the big studio thing goes and like working yourself up that way, but I had done it a few times and I did it in England. I liked making records, whether that's with smaller bands or not. You know, I liked really developing a sound and, you know, honing the song. And I told him that. I was like, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm happy working with smaller acts and stuff if I get to keep doing this thing that I've been doing for the last few years.
Yeah, you wanted the autonomy. You already like been thrown the punches and, you know, survived or whatever.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, I don't need to do this again. Like I'm my own person.
Yeah. So I ended up getting a job in Oakville at this place called Miriam. It was a music school on the top level, piano shop on the main level, and then I didn't know at the time I interviewed, but they were building a studio in the basement. So I sort of ran that for a little while. And it was sort of a commercial space more so than anything. I did a lot of jazz bands and stuff in there. And after a couple years of that, I got a call from Calvin up at Dreamhouse. So a bunch of us are all in the same circles, me and Chris and Calvin and Connor. They have 4 little production suites in the studio, which are really just a closet. He's like, one of them just opened up. I don't know if you or anybody you know wants a production room in the city. And I ended up jumping on it. And that's when I really started diving into like my version of production full time. You know, I didn't really have to just take on whatever came through a commercial studio. It was like, I can vet everything. I have a little spot of my own. And really since then it's been nonstop.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what was that? What would you say was like the key to like building up clientele, you know, in Toronto, or you could even just talk about like how people found you, how you build work how you get work, you know?
So it's a lot of word of mouth stuff actually, especially from playing in bands when I was younger. I'm still kind of like the string guy. I still do a ton of work for other producers at other studios for, you know, string arrangement stuff. And that kind of led to co-production and then having just other people hit me up from stuff that they'd heard. And that's pretty much it. Everything I do now is purely word of mouth.
Yeah, that's amazing. And tell me a little bit about Silverstein. Like, how did you get hooked up with those guys?
Right. So I played in a band for a while called First Ghost. Me and the other singer guitar player, Anton DeLost, he also does production full time. So he's much more on the band, like rocky side of things. He had a room in Toronto that he was splitting with another guy, Sam Guyana, who was working with Silverstein at the time. They were doing this like Redux album. So it was like old songs revamped. And I guess they asked like, yeah, we have a bunch of violin on this first album. We need somebody to do it. Do you know anybody who does strings? So Sam gave him my number. I got a call from Paul, the drummer. And in the same conversation, he goes, we're in the studio now. Can you come in, do some violin and cello? Also, how do you feel about touring? I'm like, I've never met the guys. I'm like, I like to tour.
Wow.
Yeah.
They offered you a tour gig before they even heard you play.
It was great. I actually wasn't going to do it at first. It was a 6.5 week run. And I was super excited about it. I was like, oh man, I just got married. That's a long time to be away. I remember telling my wife about it. I was like, yeah, I kind of got offered this gig. It would be really fun, but I don't think I can do it. She's like, why the hell not? You're stupid if you don't go. was like, okay, great. I'm going to call him right back.
Got permission.
Oh, yeah. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years.
Yeah, touring it's interesting. It's like, it's hard to say, like, I don't know. I'm also a musician before I became a producer, right? So like, it's like part of my identity that's like hard to let go of. And it's like, even though my heart is in the studio and I'm trying to push studio stuff more than anything else, if I get offered a gig, I often want to do it, right?
Of course,
like
yeah.
I still like have that, it's very appealing to get on stage and play bass. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, people talk about niching down and like, saying this is your thing and not that thing, but it's like, it's all one thing, I think, for a lot of people. And it's hard for me to kind of separate that stuff,
Yeah, I totally get in my head about that kind of stuff sometimes too.
Yeah, same.
But I can't imagine only doing one or the other. Like, they've both been a part of my life for so long, and I love doing them both for very different reasons.
I think you have to find, though, a balance that works for you, because I feel like if you're doing like 50-50 or I don't know, like I feel like you have to like figure out, or this is the only gig, or these are the gigs that I'm doing, so I don't get too far down that rabbit hole if like my main push is like in the studio, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm at a point now where like if I get offered a gig on bass, if it's like an artist I've never worked with, I'm probably gonna just not do it, even if I like their music. It's just like I can't
commit to it.
Yeah, because otherwise I've committed to too many things, right? Like it's like you have to, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and so you have to figure out what are the actual gigs I'm going to say yes to.
Yeah, how do you split your time properly?
That's what I'm working on this year, is like figuring out how to split my pie a little better.
Nice.
If that makes sense, because I'm in every direction.
Oh, I know how that goes.
Yeah, totally. I was going to ask you about mentors, but I'm assuming it's John and the guys in that studio were like big mentors for you.
Absolutely, yeah. John Mitchell, James Billinge, Ben Humphreys are the guys.
And so these days, I mean, I'm assuming you're not saying yes to every artist that hits you up. What are you looking for in an artist to say like, hell yeah, I want to work with this artist? What are the things you're looking for to say yeah?
The biggest thing for me is I like when an artist has a vision. Like they don't need to necessarily have their whole sonic thing figured out, but having an idea of, I love this. There's this like one piece of a reference maybe that they're like, this does something for me. Yeah, not even necessarily having the best songs. Like, I've got tons of songwriting friends. I do a lot of writing. I love, connecting pieces that way. But just being serious about it, having a bit of a vision, and telling me no. I don't love when I'm in a session and everything is the best thing they've ever heard. I like when they're like very much a part of it. That makes me feel better. Like a Cindy, like she is super open to experiment. We try crazy stuff, but as soon as something goes too far, it's like, no, that's not me. I don't like that. Let's try a new sound. And it's like, okay, this is a much more collaborative. Everybody's going to feel great about it at the end.
It's probably also partially because you've been in bands, right? And you know what that dynamic is like. I don't know. Like I feel like coming from like a band background, like I'm not really comfortable just, taking the whole production in any one direction all by myself. And sometimes like exactly what you were saying, like if like the artist isn't saying anything, it's just like, great, that's great. Okay, cool. Like, is this even good? I don't know. Like, I feel like I need that kind of back and forth, and that
it's like almost like a validation thing too. It's like, we're on the same page? We like this?
It's a bit of a validation thing, and it's also just like, it's your song, it's not my song. It's not my song.
I want you to be proud and like have a hand in this thing.
Exactly. Let's make sure we're going in a direction that suits you.
Yeah. And like, I don't mind doing singles. I get that's exactly, what the industry is wanting. But I'm a big concept guy too. I love when somebody wants to do like a piece of art and you can kind of develop and build a lot more of like the sonic universe around an artist, which I really enjoy. A single, you don't really get to dive into it as much, but just having that whole, I don't know if universe is the right word, but that's kind of what I think of it as. You kind of get their little signature on this whole piece of work.
Yeah. Albums are awesome. Obviously I grew up listening to records, right? Like not listening to singles.
Yep.
I'm a millennial, so that's kind of my background. But yeah, I guess how do you pace out all your productions? Because, I know, for me, it's hard for me to take on too many productions at once because it kind of, a production is like a baby or almost like a marriage, with the artist. It's like really intense. And so like for me, like I'm already married. Like I don't want to have another marriage. Like let's